A delayed game is better than an undercooked game. Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 modern games ruined by rush production.
This tech is how we survive in Andromeda. Ingenuity on the ground.
Someone else agrees.
Since we've already done a list of games that historically were rushed into development, such as the infamous ET for Atari 2600, for this list, we're focusing on modern games, which, for the sake of argument, will be titles that have been released since 2010 that could have used more time in the oven.
Have activated an uplink station. Prepare for enemy counterattack.
Number 10. Final Fantasy XIV. A game must be truly broken if the only way to save it is to burn everything to the ground and start anew. Square Enix's post-Final Fantasy X games have had their share of development issues, none more so than 2010's MMO. Put together over 5 years by a team with little experience in the genre, Final Fantasy XIV launched in a barely playable state, with a terrible user interface, awful combat, and the lack of a job system. Despite multiple patches that revamped everything from graphics to gameplay, Square had to completely shut down Final Fantasy XIV and start from scratch with A Realm Reborn. Number 9. Street Fighter V. Fighting games cater to two markets, the casual and the competitive scene. Ideally, both should be given the same amount of attention, something Capcom neglected to do with the launch of Street Fighter V. Rushed to coincide with 2016's Pro Tour, Street Fighter V debuted with barely any offline modes, limited and inconsistent servers, a paltry roster, and a pathetic excuse for a story mode. While the gameplay was quite brilliant, the $60 package was frustratingly short of content. An arcade mode, a staple of fighting games since practically forever, wasn't added to Street Fighter V until 2018. The game is much better now though, enough that we can recommend it.
Well now, little piece of junk. Time to wake up.
Well, Jordan, who is a piece of junk?
Number 8. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. The Phantom Pain is a weird case, as the game launched in a polished state with a lot of content while still feeling rushed. As the final entry in a 28-year-old franchise, The Phantom Pain takes an uncharacteristically minimalist approach to its story, with Chapter 2 being far less comprehensive than its predecessor. Metal Gear Solid's creator, Hideo Kojima, had a public falling out with Konami as The Phantom Pain's production went over budget and a deadline was imposed. The final result was a great game that peters out during its climax and lacks a sense of grandiosity the franchise deserved for its potentially last main entry by Kojima.
We got rules around here. Never draw a weapon on a fellow soldier. You got that?
Number 7. Assassin's Creed Unity.
Did you see their faces when we stole those apples?
I'm Arno.
Elise.
Following a 3-year production cycle, Assassin's Creed Unity launched in an infamously buggy state. In terms of visuals and art, Unity is a marvel to behold and made the most of the jump to 8th generation consoles. However, this came at the cost of the gameplay. While Paris was gorgeous, traversing the open world was frustrating and ripe with glitches, and it would take months for patches for Unity to reach a polished enough state that could be deemed properly playable. Ubisoft rushing Unity out of the door, just for the sake of maintaining a yearly release schedule, harmed the Assassin's Creed brand, leading to its sequel, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, experiencing a significant sales drop.
Listen, I'm sure your little cult is a delightful bunch, but I'm not interested.
Number 6. Dragon Age 2.
And just, what are you seeking?
The champion.
Which one?
Work on 2009's Dragon Age Origins dates back at least as far as 2002, but EA pushed BioWare to develop Dragon Age 2 in under 2 years. Along with purposefully taking the sequel's combat and story structure in a different direction than Origins, and more similar to Mass Effect, BioWare had to make concessions due to the short development cycle, mainly by limiting the number of dungeons and setting the story in one city rather than an expansive kingdom. The outcome was an RPG sequel that felt more restrictive and less consequential than its predecessor, almost coming across as a side story rather than a proper follow-up. Hopefully, EA learned from this mistake.
Before I take you anywhere, however, there is another matter.
Number 5. Battlefield 4. Okay, forget what I said in the last entry because EA clearly needs to learn another lesson. Battlefield 4 eventually grew into a fantastic shooter, but that was hardly the case at launch. Published approximately 2 years after the franchise's third main entry and across multiple console generations, Battlefield 4's potential brilliance was undermined by game-breaking bugs that made it difficult for many people to play, let alone enjoy its multiplayer component. To DICE's credit, the developer worked vigorously to fix Battlefield 4, but a longer development cycle would have greatly helped a title that was not only accommodating for new consoles, but also used a new engine. Battlefield 4's botched launch damaged the franchise's reputation. Number 4, Star Wars Battlefront.
Well done. We've activated the uplink.
Movie tie-in games and rush development cycles have a long and intimate history, but few were as disappointing as Star Wars Battlefront. Besides carrying the Star Wars name, 2015's game was also a reboot of the beloved Battlefront series that had not spawned a home console entry since 2005. Expectations were high when EA and DICE announced Battlefront in 2013, but a desire to capitalize on the theatrical release of Star Wars: The Force Awakens meant a single-player campaign had to be omitted. While still sporadically enjoyable, Battlefront lacked the depth in combat and modes, especially when compared to the previous entries in the franchise. This is the third EA game on this list, so fourth time's the charm? Number 3, Mass Effect Andromeda.
Ryder, Sarah, Recon Specialist, Pathfinder Mission Team.
Pathfinder team.
And here we are, again EA. While technically BioWare spent 5 years on Andromeda, the RPG struggled to find any direction until the last 18 months. Years dedicated to the idea of procedurally generated worlds ended up going nowhere, and by 2015, Andromeda's story, mission structure, and vision had yet to take shape. Combined with personnel changes and an engine far from ideal for RPGs, Andromeda went through a horrible development cycle and led to BioWare putting together the majority of the game within the final months before release, leaving little time for polish. Andromeda had elements that worked, but all of that was overshadowed by its many meme-worthy flaws.
Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
Number 2, Anthem.
What's life without a few exciting complications?
Organized? Understandable? Calm?
Sounds awful.
Well, with 5 rushed games after each other, EA is nothing if not consistent. Anthem was in development for 7 years, but most of that period was consumed by potentially exciting concepts that were not united through a single vision. By late 2016, BioWare was still unsure of whether to include flight, one of Anthem's core mechanics, and the game's 2017 E3 footage was closer to a tech demo than anything indicative of a fully fledged project well in development. All the time in the world means nothing when no progress is being made, and Anthem was only starting to make headway in its final 2 years before launching as a half-baked product with an infamous roadmap that ended up being scrapped.
There you go. You're okay.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure to go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. What could have been. Activision sneaks in to break EA's streak and steal the crown. More than a decade after the last numbered entry in the series, Activision announced and published Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, all within the space of a year. One of the worst rated games of the 2010s, and reportedly rushed out of the gate as Activision's Tony Hawk license was expiring, Pro Skater 5 is a cynical and lifeless mess that makes a mockery of a beloved series. Launching with fewer levels than even 1999's original Pro Skater, 2015's sequel required a huge day one patch to get most of its content running, although that did little to help the bugs and downgraded controls. Worse still, the game is now unplayable since it required an always online connection and the servers have now shut down. In the mood for more awesome gaming content? Be sure to check out this video here on Mojo Plays. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.